Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, after almost 3 decades of shaping African football, Issa Hayatou has been ousted as chief of the continent's football federation. Madagascar's Ahmad Ahmad wins the CAF election for its new president. Also, out with the old, in with the new, and African football fans are hoping that applies to more than just faces. Hayatou's leadership was, at times, dogged with scandal, and Ahmad has promised change for CAF. We head to Kenya for more on what that might mean. And giving voice to female victims of violence, African all-women singing troupe African Amazons tackles the subject on their new album. We catch up with them as they pass through Paris for its release. Well, first, after almost 3 decades, leader of the Confederation of African Football, Issa Hayatou, is being replaced by a new chief. CAF voted 34-20 to pass the baton to Madagascar Ahmad Ahmad, who won Thursday's election with his promises of change.
The head of Madagascar's Football Federation, Ahmad Ahmad, is now the new face of African football. Despite being relatively unknown in Thursday's election, he easily beat incumbent Issa Hayatou, who led CAF for 29 years.
This is a change of leadership, a change of generation. As I've always said, leaders come and go, get younger. It means there is always a need for new leadership.
Ahmad Ahmad supporters hope his win will mark a departure from years of corruption scandals in African football. His predecessor was accused of receiving €1.5 million in bribes to back Qatar's winning bid to host the 2022 World Cup. Previously, Hayatou was sanctioned by the International Olympic Committee for taking cash from sports marketing company ISL back in 1995. The Cameroonians always denied any wrongdoing, but Ahmad was able to use the controversy surrounding his rival to his advantage, presenting himself as the candidate of change and transparency and promising to restore trust and confidence in the institution.
When you try to do something, you mean that you can do it. If I can't do it, I never stand.
Ahmad is also battling accusations that he took bribes from Qatar, which he strongly denies. Previously, he served as Madagascar's sports minister and a senator. He took the reins of his country's football federation in 2003.
Well, Timothy Olubulu tells us more about what Ahmad's victory will mean for the future of African football and how, despite Hayatou long having been the favourite, Ahmad won delegates over.
First of all, it was all about his campaign strategy. The first thing he did was to make sure that he had a personal touch with all the FA presidents. And we can't downplay the role that COSAFA had to play. We remember that Philip Chiangwa, the chairman of COSAFA, who is also the chairman of the Zimbabwean Football Association, called a meeting of all football association heads in South Africa to discuss how they're going to ensure that Ahmad is the president of CAF come the elections, which were held today. And that is one thing that really took him over, because he had a personal touch to all the FA presidents. He sold his agenda out personally, and also there was the wind of change that has been blowing all over football in Africa. It started all the way from FIFA, Mr. Sepp Blatter stepping out and Infantino coming in, and there was that urge that it is time for Africa to change the leadership, to bring in a new man at the helm, a new man whom could bring in new ideas, and those are some of the things that Mr. Ahmad really rode on to make sure that he was elected as the new Confederation of African Football president.
So as you mentioned there's a lot of expectation that he will take football on the continent in a new direction. What changes specifically do you expect under Ahmad?
There's so much promise that is made, and he has a huge task to ensure that whatever is promised, he delivers, because he's been elected on the platform of the changes that is promised to bring on board. One thing I'm particularly interested in knowing how he's going to implement is ensuring that each individual football association gets enough funding from CAF. There's been word that there's so much money at CAF, but come to the end of the day, not enough comes back to the individual FS. Another thing he's promised to bring on board is inclusivity and ensuring that football in the continent is united. There's been a very huge difference between Anglophone countries and Francophone countries through the leadership of Mr. Hayatou. Anglophone countries have been feeling that they've been left behind, and there's a huge disparity between the two. It is now up to Ahmad to ensure that there's a bridging of the gap between the two, between Francophone countries and Anglophone countries. Another thing that is very particular about is infrastructure. We all know that most often than not, when African countries host very big events, for example, the World Cup in South Africa, what happens to the infrastructure after that? Do they become white elephants? Are the infrastructure put in good use? Those are some of the blueprints that Ahmad is trying to bring on board, and we really want to see how he wants to bring the same on board.
Timothy Olubulu there for us. Well, at a look at some news in brief now. Somali pirates released a hijacked oil tanker on Thursday after a gunfight erupted nearby between coast guards and armed men heading towards the vessel in a separate boat. Authorities say that no ransom was paid. 8 Sri Lankan hostages had been held since the Aris 13 tanker was seized on Monday as it travelled from Djibouti to Mogadishu. It was the first Somali pirate boarding of a merchant vessel since 2012. At least 2 people were killed by gunmen who attacked an aid convoy in South Sudan earlier this week. The vehicles had been returning from the central town of Yerol when they were ambushed. The country's civil war has led to famine, and aid workers had been helping communities suffering from cholera before they were targeted. Libya's UN-backed government said that armed groups in Tripoli have signed a ceasefire deal to end a 4-day battle for control of the capital. It reportedly calls for militia that don't recognise the GNA unity government to leave the city within 30 days. Fighting broke out on Monday after pro-GNA forces seized several districts from rival militia after the killing of a bank guard. The former leader of South Africa's main opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has apologised after she tweeted that the legacy of colonialism wasn't all bad. Helen Zille, now the leader of Western Cape Province, entered into a back and forth on social media when critics called her out for praising aspects of the colonial system. The DAs responded, saying that colonialism's oppressed millions and that Zille will face a disciplinary hearing. Now to an all-woman singing ensemble that's keen to have their voices heard. The Amazon d'Afrique, or African Amazons, singing troupe has gathered together some of the best voices of Western Africa in a bid to raise the volume on the conversation about violence towards women. The group's been in Paris for the release of their new album. We went to meet them.
They come from Benin, Mali, or Nigeria. 2 generations of West African singers who all deliver the same message. A call to stop violence against women. Mariam Kone is a singer. She joined the group in 2015 when it was founded. Alongside her are recognised voices, Rukia Kone, Kanja Kuyate, or Marian Doumbia.
Our message isn't only for African women. It goes out to women across the world who are victims of domestic violence or violence in the workplace.
A women's ensemble bearing the name of ancient warriors. An allusion to the former Dahomey Amazons, a women's regiment in 18th century Benin. However, the similarities end there, because these women are far from being at war.
We're not waging a war against men. On the contrary, we ask men to fight for us, with us. Our album République Amazon is a love letter addressed to men.
The Amazons' musicians are practically all men, a symbol of the singers' call for unity, an example of their struggle. The song I Play the Kora, the name of an instrument exclusive to men in Mali. A single which mixes hip-hop with traditional African music and which symbolises equality for women's rights.
And finally, someone was looking out for a pastor in Sierra Leone who stumbled across a huge 706-carat diamond. Emmanuel Momo extracted the gem from a mine in the Kono region, and it's now thought to be the 10th largest stone ever found. The self-employed miners now due the proceeds of any future sale. It was presented to President Ernest Koromo this week before being locked away in a vault where it will stay until it's valued. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for watching. Do so again. Take care.
You love watching France 24 in English.
Analysis from France 24. I'm Mark Owen. These are the main world news.
To the border with Algeria.
Huge lines since this morning to answer that question.
But France 24 is also available in French.
14h à Paris, bonjour à tous, bienvenue si vous nous rejoignez sur France 24, préparez-vous.
And Arabic.
شعبية هذا الباب القادم من أمريكا الجنوبية في ازدياد
Also coming up.
Featured on cable and satellite systems and online media in France and across the world.